Welcome to Perceptions Today podcast, where we discuss consciousness in all forms. September 2022, episode 34. Stephanie Quick joins us in a roundtable about synchronicity, part 3 of 4. Stephanie Quick is a researcher who has a passion for synchronicities, erotic mysticism, and much more. Participants knew it was being recorded.
Oh, but this is where all the fun is.
Oh, definitely. Gabe, how's it going?
Good. I was just hoping that I don't drop out.
It's okay. I won't take it personally. I know that some places that you call in from are very dodgy with signal.
Yes, I'm actually at one of them right now. I'm at work.
Okay, just make sure that you're hiding in the corner while you're talking to us.
Yeah, I have to stay in one spot. I can't move.
Okay. That's another good visual image that I'm having at this present time, because I know that you're probably standing in the printer room on one foot and reaching for the window to get the best signal.
No, actually, I'm in a room without any windows, so that's even worse.
Semi-Faraday cages, right? All fun and games. But you obviously have quite a lot of synchronicities that come through in your actual dream logs.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna get into any, but yeah, they do come up. They come up, and I get a lot of validate. It just makes it all more fun.
Oh, definitely. And has anybody else? Oh, Brad, how you doing? Good to see you. Going to send you an invite. I don't think I've actually had the opportunity to speak to Elric. He's always been having, obviously, the times when he can't actually talk. Azure, I'm going to send you an invite. I'm not sure if you can pick up or not. And Global, nice to see you back from yesterday. Mycelium, and here we go. You can't talk. Okay, Azure, fine. I will remove that invitation from yourself. But no, the conversation from Stephanie, and if you go and read through her actual Ghost Dog is a Mystery Box, is a fantastic kind of eye-opener. And again, there are many podcasts which she's appeared on, and especially the Empath one with Project Archivist, and also, I've got to get this right, it's either the Green Dragon or the Green Lion with Taylor Bell. Hang on 1 second while I type in my search engine to make sure I get the right one. You might not realize you are an actual empath, when people start coming in giving you lots of information which you didn't really ask for. And I know a lot of people. So it is the Green Lion podcast. And again, you've also got the other direction where you might be standing in a group of people and suddenly find your emotions are running wild and they're not under your own control. It's because you're absorbing other people's emotions as if they're basically being attracted into you, but you're triggered by either their joy, their anger, or even if you walked into a shopping centre and it was full of people, or a concert hall, you start becoming jittery because you can't take the people around you. And it's interesting when you start listening to other people discuss their ways that they have their empathic abilities, or haven't realised until they've talked to others and been around others. And again, you can also kind of push, as Rojan talks, sometimes between dreams being that empath-wise, even if the distance doesn't really matter either. Global, you've been able to pick up the microphone. How are you doing down there in Australia?
Well, thanks. Sorry, I didn't sleep very well last night, so I was late to the podcast. But, I feel that I do have that mini superpower, that I can hear meetings that people have had, or I can pick up their emotions post a meeting, or if they're long distance, I can feel what some people are feeling or thinking sometimes. And I've only just sort of acknowledged that in the last couple of years that I can do that. I think I have taken a lot of coincidences and abilities for granted, that everyone has that, but now I realise when I speak to people, they get quite disturbed that I know what they've talked about with someone else, or so it's interesting. I thought most people had that.
Oh, we've had similar kind of conversations with people when we were talking that if you close your eyes and gently push on the side of your eyes, that you produce light So if you're in a dark room and you did this, one particular part of the community, she didn't actually think it worked on her, and she couldn't produce those light kind of sparks in her eye by gently pressing, where everybody else was saying, no, actually we've seen this before in other ways. So it's fascinating when you think or come across other people who you think everyone else has got your kind of ways of interpreting emotions and facts, and then realize they haven't got that. So an interesting example.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, an interesting example is that my mother and myself, we used to pick up on each other's pain and other kind of things. So if there was an accident, we would feel the right location for that injury or what happened. And sometimes we didn't know whether it was our own or the other ones, but then suddenly we realized that it was... we learned to realize who was having what. So, for example, when I actually broke several bones, she actually knew about it at the time of me actually doing it. And one time when she was having an operation, I didn't know the actual time of she was having the operation, but I went extremely grey and white at work, and it happened to be exactly the time that things were going on with her. So it's interesting how that connection point works with people.
It is, isn't it? It is amazing. I sometimes come across people who can do what I do, and we look at each other like, oh, there's a recognition and actually a comfort, because I don't know, you have these things that you can do, and you think, well, what is the purpose of this? What use can I make of it? What direction? What value can I add to this, having this knowledge?
Well, I think there's a lot of us in here that suddenly realize you make a lot of mistakes before you actually realize what you can do with it properly. And again, when you're in positions with friends who can't express their emotions and you're the one that picks up on them, you can actually either diffuse the situation or help explain situations to the others which don't understand. Those are some of the simple things that I've learned over a period of time with this kind of events. But the first time you kind of feel out of your water. No, out of your depth is the best one, not out of the water. I'm making up my own expressions as I go along. This is always good.
No, very true. Coupled with this ability to sort of pick up on people's emotions or know what has been said, I am quite upfront and actually brutally blunt, which is not always a great trait to have. So while I want to step in and say something to someone to help them, I always edit myself now, because it may not be what they need to hear at that time.
Oh, I've done that.
To have those two to be so blunt, and I think those two things are not those two attributes are not great to have together.
Not all the time. Again, with some people who might even hide their own emotional content, when you tell things bluntly, it goes down so badly, but they put on a good face in front of you, and then you suddenly realize that you made a complete mistake and it's held against you for years. Done that before.
That's true. That's so true. And that's why I do edit myself now heavily.
And as long as you don't keep going around to telling small children there's no tooth fairy or Santa Claus when they're only about 4 or 5.
Oh. Yeah,
Don't be that
I'll
blunt.
listen to the experts anyway. I find synchronicity, I don't think I've looked around for it very much, or I take it for granted. So I suppose you've made me more aware of it, and to look around a little bit more for it.
Oh, it'd be interesting to see what happens after these conversations when people come back and see if anything does happen. I mean, Shadow Fox has got some information, and she's very aware of if you haven't been looking at things for the first time, but when you do start giving attention to it, it will manifest in a manner, and you'll suddenly realize things. So, yeah. Shadow Fox?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are really bringing up some fantastic points, but I really must say this, because Paul, you just rained on my parade. You just told me there was no Easter Bunny. And for the majority of this...
Didn't mention the Easter Bunny.
You know, because we've been talking about the white rabbit, you know, the synchronicities here. And so, yeah, but there's definitely great patience in editing oneself.
I was taught a very good rule, which was take 5 seconds before you say anything. And listen to yourself first.
How did you luck out with 5? I had to count to 10.
It depends on how many times you put your foot in your mouth before time. I think that's probably, for me, that's how I learned to get it down to 5. So it's nice to see Sarah, because I haven't been able to speak to her for a while. And obviously Trent is from continuing the conversation, and I'm not sure if he can pick up the invitation to talk or not. If not, give me the peace symbol, Trent. Hopefully you're not... Okay, right. You're not driving or operating heavy machinery at this time. That's good. And, right. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, this is Gabe. I wanted to jump in about the white rabbit.
Continue.
I wasn't in on those conversations about the white rabbit, and I just looked it up. And yeah, I wasn't going to bring up anything about the dreams, but I did happen to have a white cat show up in several dreams. So it's like, I guess that was my white rabbit. And when you guys started talking about it, it kind of like perked up my antenna. So
excellent.
I was kind of interested on that. I'm going to do some more reading.
Yes. Did you pick up in the Twitter account tweets back in early March about March hares that we were discussing with Cosmic Librarian and the tarot card and other bits?
No, I'm going to have to go back and check those out.
So the synopsis of that was, we found out through mythology of the Celts that the hare diving down into, well, I have to say rabbit holes, but hare holes, sounds wrong, and would be the translation of going from one realm to another realm, and the hare was related to being a shapeshifter.
Right.
And this sort of then falls into your realms of the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland and other bits which are connected. And as Myron was saying, C.S. Lewis was basically on the cards of possibly being suffering from epilepsy. We didn't know which type, but that's why he might have been incorporating some of these imagery and storylines. And it's fascinating when you start seeing, obviously, the March hare being... And again, the Romans put in a law when they invaded, because the Celts in the UK and Ireland and obviously around held it in such a high regard, it was against the law to actually kill them. Right. So this was the fascination about it all.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely going to have to do some more reading.
And, of course, then you get Harvey, then you go into the Matrix with the connections to the White Rabbit and following down the deep hole and all other film references and book references, of course, and paintings.
You know, it's funny when I saw Harvey the first time, and he's explaining how Harvey got his... And so he meets this White Rabbit, and he says, "What's your name?" And Harvey says to him, "Well, what do you think my name is?" And he said, "I think your name is Harvey." And he says, "Oh, well, that is my name." And that was the kind of relationship that I had with Charon about Charon's. I mean, Charon isn't called Charon. I mean, I made that name up when I was younger. But when I saw the film, I went, "Wow, that's exactly what happened with me and Charon, is that all of a sudden I started calling him Charon, or it calling him Charon." Just like Harvey said, "Yeah, well, amazing, that's my name," which probably wasn't your name, but that's okay. If you want to be called Harvey, well, I'll take Harvey. I mean, Harvey's all right.
Yeah, you've twitched my brain. There's another couple of either books or films that I've seen where the main character comes across a sentient talking person and is asked the same question and then provides a name and the other one takes it. I don't know if it's in mythology and other bits and pieces, but I have to see if I can drag it out of my brain, because it's really kind of hit home on that.
Yeah, it's common when they just agree because they don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter what you call them. That's not the point. So that's why when I saw that in the film, I must have been pretty young when that film came out. I'm really not really sure when that film came out, but when that happened, I was just kind of going, "Whoa, wait a minute! That's exactly what happened with Caron."
Well, that was 1950, Harvey.
Well, then I would have been 7 years old. So but I didn't see it in 1950. I think I saw it on TV years later, but. Because we didn't even have a television in 1950. We were listening to the radio. I mean, there was no television in 1950. So, I mean, there were 3 channels in 1952, 53, something like that. 1 local here, and then 2 national. That's how technology has changed just in my lifetime.
Definitely. I didn't realize it was based on a play by Mary Chase in 1944.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did a lot of research on it as soon as I saw the film because of the White Rabbit thing, and then I looked up her story. She's a pretty fascinating character. And there's a movie called The Haunting that's written by another lady that is a masterpiece, ghost story. I mean, it's a Robert Wise film.
Oh yeah, I saw the remake. Don't spoil it for anyone. It was really good.
The remake's terrible, just terrible.
I know, but the plot line and how it goes on is fantastic.
But, in the original, he used a 1920s camera that would keep in focus what was at distance and right close up. And no normal camera would do that back in 1960. So Robert Wise found another kind of camera where he could do this wide range screen and keep both images in focus at the same time. He was the only one who ever did it. So it was really kind of cool. Now, of course, it doesn't matter. It's all digital, but not back in 1960, it wasn't. And I think it was an English film anyway, because I think it was shot in England. Even though it was supposed to be in Boston, well, it was not.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the kind of country house name, but I can't remember it.
Well, they even talked about, I have a extended version of the explanation, and they shot the whole thing and the house that they rented and all that kind of stuff. And even though a lot of it's on the sound stage, the same place they shot Space Odyssey years later, and they shot The Shining on that same sound stage.
Yeah, that's a film and a half. Yeah,
because that hotel is a set. That's not a hotel. That's a sound stage.
Yeah.
It's amazing he could reproduce that.
He was a master of putting in imagy and getting exactly how he wanted and making people take many, many takes.
That little boy, just a little boy and Stratman Covers or whatever his name is. They had 40 takes of him eating that ice cream at that station. A little boy, 40 takes. He must have been going out of his mind.
Just when you think how small a stomach is and how much ice cream you can only fit into a small child.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if they were eating ice cream the whole time, but at least they were pretending. Yeah, I was watching a podcast on Space Odyssey last night, and they were talking about how it looks today like it was digital. It still looks digital, and none of it's digital. And that's what's amazing about the film. It's all real sets, real things. I mean, it's just amazing what he could do. He was really quite an amazing genius.
Definitely on the visuals. I just want to try and get, if we can, I'm trying to read, I think it says Rina, and obviously the secretary of Japanese company. If you fancy taking one of the requests or the invites I've just sent, that'd be great. And we'll probably go for another 10 or 15 minutes if you want on synchronicities or anything else, or discussing some of the upcoming events that are forthcoming. Or has anyone checked out any of the podcasts recently? We can talk about anything.
About Anthony's. When you say it's on 2 times, is it the same thing twice, or is it 2 different things? Remember one's in the morning and one's in the later day.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of event, But for the people who are asleep in America, they won't be coming to the first one. You can kind of...
What time does that one start? It's supposed to be 6 a.m. or 5 a.m.
Okay, so it's going to be 9 a.m. my time. And if you're 8 hours back, that's 1 a.m. for you.
Right.
But for Shadow Fox, who's New York State, that's only 5 hours back. So you're more likely to be hitting the 3 o'clock UK time one. So that's only 7 hours back the other direction.
Right.
No, 8 hours back the other direction, because we're changing to the 27th of March, and we have go forwards the clocks. So just make sure we get all in the right order.
But the subject will be the same, right?
The subject will be anything of his research or any other sharing experiences or anything that anybody wants to bring to the table.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the main thing is obviously the consciousness and just ideas of anything that comes through podcast, anything we've seen, anything we've really kind of discussed. It's going to be really open. None of them have ever been the same twice, even though we've done 5 times the same day, but split over 2 sessions in a day.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because he and I have done 2 or 3, and they're different. So I get it.
Yeah. Because we have such a nice forum of people that come up from different parts of the world and all come from different experiences, they will definitely bring up new areas that we will be discussing. It just is fascinating.
It's really, again, here we are with this technology. You realize how impossible it would be 40 years ago. I mean, if you did this over your phone, it would be $400 or $500.
Oh, definitely. And the fact, if we wanted to actually hire out an auditorium to have this kind of conversation, you would have to either go and see the person standing on stage talk for 2 hours, then they might not even be able to hang around and talk to you for, say, an hour. And if there's 300 people wanting to talk to one person in an hour to get things over, it's difficult. Now we got the capability, if people want to give their times, whether people with questions or with experiences or anything else, we can get together all over the world and we can spend so much time just discussing the same thing, and we can always do another bit, and it's not that expensive. Obviously it's your data plan and your time. That's the only thing.
Yeah, when I first met Oliver Stone, it was a book signing. Okay, so there must have been 1,000 people there, and then he was signing books after the lecture, and so I was telling him about my experiences, and then he got really interested in them, but we didn't have time to talk about it. So he set up an appointment for me to go see him and all that kind of stuff. And however, if that had been a podcast, it would have been easy to do. But there was people in line waiting to get their books signed, and he didn't want to sign their books. He wanted to talk to me about my books because they kind of coincided with his. And it was just kind of weird. And then he said, here's my card. Call me, and I'll set up a time. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So yeah, I mean, it is weird, when you're in a theater or something and they have these discussions in these groups, you can't do anything. I mean, like when I was telling you about meeting those parents after I talk, I'd have a stack of them. There must be like 20 or 30 of them standing waiting to talk to me. Well, I only have so much time for to talk to each one of them, so I have to kind of not blow them off, but I have to answer the question pretty quickly and succinctly, and then get to the next one and get to the next one and get to the next one and get to the next one. And then I just run out of time, and that's what's so good about, because even the Epilepsy Foundation is doing more and more podcasts for that reason, because you just can't do it. You can't answer all those questions. You just can't do that. There's no way. So anyway, it's kind of cool.
Oh, definitely. It's been one of the things that I've learned, that when we've been going through discussions and taking videos apart and doing deep dives, and because I obviously want to make everything easy for anyone coming in from any level and put it as layman terms, it's always been the way of thinking, how can I throw a concept over in imagery? Hopefully most people take stories in because obviously there are some people that can't imagine things because of medical conditions, and some people aren't very good at visualization in their own mind. I try and think of short stories that will give at least a foothold into the topic or the subject that we're doing, and do it that way. For example, we did one on a neuroscience topic from Stuart Hammeroff, and I ended up trying to describe one particular part of the brain and how it functioned. So I looked up the definition and I rewrote it into a small kind of story. Then I found that subsetted into another medical jargon, which was a larger 12-letter word. That then went into a 6-letter word, and then there was another 12-letter word, and it was like nested Russian dolls kind of bit. And I went, I can comprehend this because I've learnt it by reading and doing this. But then I've had to try and figure out, okay, we have to really surface it. And even though I have to use these words, I'll do it in a very short burst, but do it slowly, because we've got language problems, we've got cultural problems that I could run into while trying to describe, and the way people understand my accent compared to others. And it's been a real nice learning curve and all these things. Shadow Fox?
How long have you been doing this?
For doing these actual Twitter Space events, I've only been doing it since the 8th of September.
Oh, so this is brand new for you.
It's very babyish. It's literally just into 6.5 months.
Wow.
Give or take. And that's gone from the evolution of doing the talks and then learning all the software to generate podcasts, edit, put it together, do all the promotional bits, learning it all myself and making it, kind of run smoothly as possible.
Well, actually, Anthony has the same problems you do, so and he's been doing it a long time. I mean, they have a lot of time with Facebook in the morning. They have a lot of problems getting those things going. They always get going, but it takes time.
Oh, I always knew it was going to be a long run kind of idea, because it's something that is always curious to me, and it's my learning curve and my passion because of the neurology, pain management. All that is just something that I've been trying to learn for myself. And while I've been doing that, it was expressing it to others along the lines. But the 4 people that kind of pushed me into doing this, and when I say pushed me, it was like, you should do more with the information. Hats off to them, because they did it correctly and it worked. And it's beneficial, I find, for learning from others.
Why did you do it? Why did you do it? I mean, it is a lot of work.
It felt right. I mean, I had so much resistance against it in my own head to just get out there and talk about it. Right. So I couldn't understand why I had the resistance. I thought nobody would want to listen. And then once I cracked the back of doing what I said to Shadow Fox and a few others that have been in the room before, my first intention was, Twitter Space came out early September. I said to myself, I'll be live for an hour, and if anybody turns up for that, it will either work or it won't work, and then I don't even have to bother about the podcast or anything else like that. I'll just continue doing my just putting up good old links onto Twitter Space and all my reading and contacting other people and networking others. And then I started it off, and it went for 3.5 hours. And I just thought, oh my God, lightning in a bottle. And then I thought, that won't work again. So I thought, I'll do it right. I'll go on a Friday night when everybody's going to go out, and I'll show how bad this. There'll be nobody to turn up, and people turned up. And it's just gone on from there. It's just bizarre.
Well,
and you know what? I'm really glad you did do it, because you know what? You really hold this space in, and you offer people so many different things, whether it be content or, what other people are researching and experiencing. And quite honestly, you're the perfect person for it. And so I must say, thank you, Paul, for actually going in on a Friday night and diving into it. Thank you. And yeah, so I got to give you the kudos there, because I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, out of all the jobs that I've had, I mean, this isn't a job. This is just obviously my passion project. That it's the one that feels so right, with all the right connections, and doesn't feel wrong. And it's really bizarre.
It was what I was saying before, when things are supposed to go into your pantheon of experience, they just seem to happen. You don't have to really, if you really have to work at it. In fact, I was listening to a physicist talking about it, and they were saying, if we have to make the math work by going around things, and if we get it really complicated, but it works, we know we're in the wrong place. It may work, but we've gone around the way it should be. It should be authentic and simple. It should not be this complex. And I think the same thing's true when you start a project. If the project starts to work, then it'll work, and it's supposed to work, and it'll just work because the energy is perfect. Like when I first started my art career, I'd never done a show in my life, and then I did one of the biggest shows in California. It got reviewed all over the newspapers, and my whole career was built overnight. And so obviously that was supposed to happen. And it nothing got in the way of it. It's just so funny. I mean, it just came out of the blue, and all the people that had to get in line to make this happen, because you're talking about the financing and all the rest of it. It's very expensive to put on a show with 250 pieces in it, and then a book that they did on top of that. They published a book, and then Clive Barker wrote the introduction. Anyway, all that stuff just happened, and it went very smooth. There was very little conflict or anything. It just happened. And then I've had other projects that I tried to get done, and I know no matter what I did, I couldn't get those projects off the ground. And then Karen would just say, those projects are not for you. And then that would be the end of that. So I think when they work like that, there's a reason they work like that.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely agree. I just got to step in here real quick because I would like to say goodbye to everyone. And I just didn't care to just, split out of the room here. But thank you, everyone, for hanging out, listening, and speaking and sharing. I thank you. And I will take my leave. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for turning up again, and thanks for Lee for talking and educating me even more.
Whoops.
I will speak to you soon. Brad, how are you doing?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, when will Laird Scranton be next time?
Laird will be on the 19th of April, and for the UK time, it will be 7 p.m.
Do you know that there was a podcast with him, with Killer Priest, where he was talking with a person who advocated flat Earth?
Oh, no, I haven't heard that one. If you pass me a link for that through either direct messaging, that'd be great.
Send it to you. And I want to ask Myron whether some symbols were associated with Karen. Did he hallucinated or had obsession with symbols?
I didn't hear that.
I think he was asking whether Karen's got obsession with symbols, possibly. Did you say that, Brad? Because the audio's a bit in and out at the moment. Brad?
Yeah, very bad connection. Yes, Scranton told that UFO experiences saw old Egypt symbols, so hallucinated. So I asked Myron Dowler whether he hallucinated some old symbols or not.
Okay, so I got that. So Brad was mentioning that the last time Laird was talking about symbology, and also that he saw symbols, and wondered if you saw any, or Karen, or both of you saw symbology that might have been kind of connected to Egyptian bits. Because I think you mentioned when we were talking to Laird last time on the 10th of March, Myron.
Oh, there's no question that I've actually done some paintings of Egyptian figures. The way that they painted them, sideways, with their legs in a certain configuration. There's not much depth to the figure, and that was even before I had gotten involved with Egyptian stuff. But yeah, I've studied a lot of Egyptian iconography and of course, because of Orion, Orion's
Yeah, because Brad was actually asking, did you actually see anything kind of in a vision state with symbology as well in that way? Probably either as a child or as you were growing up before you actually saw that symbols actually
Like
in
symbol
books
of
and
the
things.
cross, symbol of the fish, symbol of moon,
no,
like obsessionally hallucinating a symbol.
no. What I
Yeah.
see is not this. I don't see any symbols of the regular world that have ever existed. What I see is completely different from what the regular world looks like. I don't. There's no reference in my work to any culture of any kind. The culture is my unconscious. So there's no connection between what I do and, say, Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology, or even though I've studied all those things, when the visions come, they're unique to themselves. I'm not painting like a picture of the Parthenon and then adding a character to it. I don't even think about the Parthenon. I'm seeing something that's inside my unconscious that has nothing to do with anything on Earth. And in fact, that's the reason I got the shows in the first place, is because no one had ever seen anything that looks like my work. And so consequently, I moved above a lot of other people because I wasn't reproducing the world. I was reproducing my inner world rather than the world. Even if I was painting it as a symbol, I didn't do that. So no, the answer is no. I don't paint symbols. I paint the visions that I actually have. Now, there are some paintings that I do that are of people, but those are commissions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my vision. My visions are not symbols. Now, you could say that they are symbols to me, but there are no symbols like them in the world. You couldn't you could go anywhere in the world you wanted to and not find those symbols anywhere, because that's not. I see these visions like people do on DMT. And that's why I don't need to take it, because my symbols are my own, and they're not part of any culture on Earth. And I think that's the reason that people were interested in my work in the first place, is that they don't look like anything they've ever seen before. And I always tell kids, that are trying to get into the art world, what do you got to do? And I said, well, first of all, you've got to paint one has ever seen, and two, you got to know somebody, and three, you got to do the work. I mean, if you think about Frida Kahlo, she paints her pain. Everything is, there's no symbol. There's no symbols in her paintings except for her own pain.
I went to that exhibition and I saw, complete eye opener. I read her book first off, then saw the film, and then went to the Tate Modern exhibition of that. And it's almost like you go through weeping that as well as going through joy at all the different things from her lifestyle, because there's no punches were pulled from that. It was right in your face.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that's why, I have her whole diary. She published her whole diary, her personal diary, in a book. And I have a copy of it. And she talks about her relationship with Diego Rivera, and she talks about her art, and she talks about her pain and all the operations she had. And she didn't live that long, and she didn't paint that long. And but if you look at her imagery, it isn't symbolic in the sense of like Egyptian or Greek or Mesopotamian or anything else. It's her pain that she is painting all the time. And that's why I love her work so much, because I totally relate to it, because what I paint is mostly my own visions and pain because of the epilepsy that I have in my...
Just quickly, I just want to find out from Brad and also Azur and Eldritch. I think obviously Global knows Frida, but just make sure that we haven't kind of gone over some of these people's heads with them not knowing. Azur, are you familiar with Frida? Well, go a hands up symbol if you can get to the icon. Eldritch, I'm just seeing. I know you. Okay, right. So Well, it was not a hands up, that was a peace symbol, but I'll take it as a hands up. That'd be good. Right. But obviously, you might know, obviously, the Russian connection to Frida with the political scene and what happened there because of the way that it all went on. Brad?
I must tell you, that movie is one of my favorite movies about an artist ever.
I couldn't believe it took Salma Hayek 10 years to actually get it all together with the financing and everything else.
Oh, that's true for even big producers. It can take a decade.
Yeah, I mean, people were kind of shelving it in a way, but the fact that she got to obviously star in it and she did portray it correctly, and just the fact of the accident when coming off the cart and having one of the poles go through her, obviously through the pelvis and everything else, and putting her in bed. And that's where she kind of started off her artwork from there. And then just everything else that went on with her life and just the relationships. And obviously they weren't great. And some were fantastic and some were just amazing who she kind of bumped into at that time period. It was...
Yeah, and of course she was involved with communism in Mexico and all the rest of that. And so was Diego Rivera. And you know, I mean, it was a complicated time in Mexican, you know, history. And Rivera admitted that he could never paint what she, even though he's a great artist, he don't get me wrong, but he does not paint the interior of his mind. He paints symbolic things, which is not the interior of his mind. It's the exterior of the world that he's all the time. So he admitted that he could never paint what
he was a political painter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was his whole thing. And he was wonderful at it. But she was magical because she painted her interior process without any kind of restriction. And that's what I do. And if you don't like it, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah, she did it for, well, it's like yourself. You do it for yourself. You don't do it to please somebody else's concept of what they think is art. When I was growing up and being taken through galleries in London and other places, I suddenly realized that the art that didn't make me stop and actually look into it was unfortunate to me, because if the artwork either produced joy in me or extreme emotion, then the artwork piece has done its job on me for provoking a reaction to actually spend more time to contemplate it rather than, you know, surface glance, walk away and ignore it. And that was kind of my gauge of the world, that if I suddenly see something that doesn't really catch my eye and provoke an emotional reaction, it was kind of that way.
You know, somebody asked me, they ask me all the time, you know, who's your favorite painter? Well, I can't answer that. I mean, what period do you want to talk about? We've got 15,000 years here now. You know,
it's also what piece of artwork, because you might just like one piece from one artist. You won't like everything. It's like musicians. You don't like all pieces of work.
But I did tell them the kind of art that I like is what I call psychological art. And what I mean by that is like Frida Kahlo, like, there's a whole list of these very disturbed painters. Francis Bacon is a good example. I don't know if you know his work or not, but
just a few pieces. Obviously, you got the Scream and other bits and pieces like that.
Yeah, well, there's a whole list of what would be called psychological painters, and
you would throw in Hieronymus Bosch in that, wouldn't you, as well? Hieronymus Bosch as well, because he would be psychological, because that goes against the grain of the time period.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so, you know, I those are the, you know, when I saw Monet's flowers when I was in France, I mean, the paintings are absolutely gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. They're huge, you know, and just magic. But I don't relate to.
I'll tell you a funny story, Myron.
I relate to Van Gogh more than that, or Matisse, but not
definitely.
But not. I mean, like the Red Room is. I don't know if you know that piece or not, but there's a famous Matisse thing called the Red Room, and it's all red with just little things in it. And when he's asked, you know, why did you paint this red, all this red? I mean, he said, well, the painting is red and the things are just things that are in the red paintings. But anyway, I just like that kind of painting, like Frida Kahlo's and stuff, because that speaks to the pain that I have. That doesn't mean that I don't like beautiful paintings. That's not what I'm not excluding anything. I'm just saying those are the things that I look at. When I'm looking at art, that's what I look at. Like I'm going to go to the Frida Kahlo, the one that you saw. They have one here in LA. So I'm
Yeah, I
going to
mean,
go to that. I'm going to go to that. No question about it.
I'm there
And I
with
had a
you,
friend.
Myron. I like things that sing to me, and but it's interesting that you mention things come out of pain. I think talents, abilities sometimes are born out of pain or honed through
Oh,
pain.
you're absolutely right. For instance, if you take Magritte, I don't know if you know who he is or not, but he's a surrealist painter, but he didn't have any pain. He just takes images, like he put an apple in a giant apple in a room and painted it. And, that's surrealism. He's just playing around with images, like he painted a pipe and then he wrote, "This is not a pipe." Well, it's not a pipe. It's a picture of a pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Magritte did. So even though he's writing, it's all surrealism. There's no pain in his work at all. Whereas if you look at the Edvard Munch's paintings, I don't know if you know who that is, but Edvard Munch's painting, he was depressed and he lost his sister, and all of his pain is in those paintings, and they're magnificent. And then, of course, if you look at Van Gogh's stuff, you can see his
Yeah.
pain and the most beautiful things he paints. We did a fundraiser.
just before you go too far, Myron, I want to go back to Monet for you, because it'll give you a laugh. So in, obviously, New York, you got the Museum of Modern Art.
Right.
When I happened to be there in the early 90s, there was the exhibition of Monet's water lilies there. And my mother wanted to see the actual exhibition, and we went to there. Now, I was impressed by some of the sculptures. They had strange things hanging on walls which shouldn't be in that angle, and bright colors, and I was kind of tailing behind. And when I finally got into the room, I ended up going very close to the faraway wall as you walked in through the door. And my parents were looking at paintings, and I hadn't made kind of the connection of what I was in, what room. And this was where the fun part is. So I turn to them and go, "What are you actually looking at? Because I can't make head nor tail of what this is." And I was standing about possibly a foot away from Monet's water lilies, which is something like 15 foot tall, and then goes for about 50 feet around. And you have to kind of be in the center of a room to actually get the proper perspective of what's gone on. And my mother kind of looked at me as if, "Do you not understand where you are?" And I was thinking, well, what are you looking at? Because I was just literally almost had my nose up against the painting and couldn't see it for what it really was until I got into the middle of the room. I mean, she sort of dragged me, and that was the kind of thing.
Parody of life? Don't you think
Oh,
that's
yeah,
a parody
it is,
of life? And actually, when I think of you, Myron, I think you're actually in the painting. Or so what you see is kind of the under tapestry of life.
Can I ask you, Judith, have you actually looked at his artwork?
Yeah, I did. I did look at his Twitter feed, and it's amazing.
On the actual website as well, yeah. You're like the sculptures as well, and the book and the information there.
Yeah.
I really think of myself as a sculptor anyway. I mean, I do paintings, of course, like 8,000 of them, but I've got 300 sculptures, and I do the sculptures because I can relate to them, because they are three-dimensional, and I can actually walk up to them, talk to them. In the movie that I sent Paul, I'm actually touching the sculptures in the movie, and that's what I do with them. I actually have meditation ceremonies with the actual sculptures themselves, and the art is like a diary. So if you look at Facebook, you're seeing what's going on in my head every day, because I don't take anything back. I just post it. And that's like a personal diary. So what I'm doing, what I'm putting on Facebook is my personal diary. Now, not many people would have the guts to do that. I don't. Caron told me to do it, so that's what I'm doing. I'm putting my own personal diary up every day, and I don't care. I don't care how people react. That's up to them. Even though the reaction's been pretty good, but you're right. It's just it's a record of my life, like any diary would be. except that I don't write very well. So I paint them instead. And even though I did write a book that actually got quoted quite a few times by Anthony, but I'm not much of a writer in that sense.
So just for anybody who wants to know, I've just done the last tweet has actually got the community YouTube page, which has Myron's 5-minute video on it there, and also other people that are part of our community that come and share information with us. So if you're interested, you can see it there as well. And inside that are all links.
That's pretty old, that one, but the one I sent you was 2019 and 2020, so it's fairly new. But the one you saw on that TV, on that thing with Jim Abram, and but anyway, the point of it is that I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't hold anything back, and that I would put everything out there, so no one could accuse me of hiding anything. So I don't get accused of hiding things because I put everything out there. I don't
Well, I
hold
think you get to a point in your life too where you go, I've got less life left.
Right.
And what is the point of hiding who I am or what I represent?
Younger, I had to be careful because I was a vice president, and I would have gotten fired, and it would have been a mess. You know, we'd have to have gone to court and fight over our contracts and all that stuff. So I never mentioned to anyone that I was ever an artist, ever. You know, it was discovered in about 2003. That's when it was discovered, or 2000, in the year 2000, something like that.
That must have been an unhappy time for you when you were working and not able to, you know, be your true self.
Yeah, it is weird to be an outsider and pretend like you're an insider. You know, I mean, I have the gift of gab, as you noticed, so I'm pretty good at selling, and that's what I did most of the time, even though I became an executive. But yeah, I mean, I could never ever reveal to people that I had epilepsy. That I mean, because as soon as I said epilepsy, that would be the end of my career right there, and that's true in the movie business too, by the way.
But you know what? The only reason why you have to hide is because other people cannot cope with looking under the tapestry or confronting the things they come across in life that have true meaning to them.
Definitely. And I've got to bring in Red, because Red is in the same situation, because Red had a near-death experience as well. And when he's been talking to other people, and I'm sure, hang on, I'll just check with Red. Red, have you got the opportunity to talk?
Yeah.
You're quite happy in me saying that people weren't too receptive, were they?
They don't understand it. And because you can't easily duplicate it, they dismiss it.
So that's the same kind of scenario that Myron's going through, and a lot of other people do, on obviously all different scales, as yourself, Judith, are talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm one of 6 children, highly academic, highly successful people, all in their own right. And they, growing up, and because I was the different one, and, you know, throughout life, have been in complete and utter denial of some of the things that they've faced. And I just, sometimes I just don't tolerate it, and I call them on it. And interesting, they won't come out publicly amongst our siblings, but they do on a one-on-one basis say things like, yeah, you were right then, you know, I just couldn't face it, or you know, it's interesting.
I'd like to bring Red in here, because he's got obviously some good experience and got his hand up, which will be beneficial to everyone, I feel. Make it right, Red. Be beneficial. Don't disappoint me now.
I don't want to interrupt or cut anybody off.
Come on, Red. Come on, Red. Come on.
So here is an example. I wish more people could hear this, because at first I didn't even want to tell this story, because
it is being recorded. More people will hear it. I don't know when, but they will.
Well, the reason, no, I mean like in real life, like live right now. So this is an example. This has happened a couple times, because this is synchronicity, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so at times it can be so overwhelming that it is literally hitting you square in the face. It's not even like a nudge or a maybe. And it would, like the last funny one that happened to me that I'm having a hard time believing is I was in a Cold Stone Creamery, which is basically a fancy ice cream shop over here in the United States. And I was doing DoorDash delivery. So I parked my car out front, go inside, and I'm waiting for the people behind the counter to complete the order, and I'm going to hop back in my car and go deliver. And while I'm in the ice cream shop, I I'm looking around and I see a poster for Lucky Charms ice cream. And I think, well, that's one of my favorite cereals. I'm in the place waiting for them to make the order. I'll try a sample of this Lucky Charms ice cream. And I did, and it was great. And I get my order, and I go back into my car, and I'm listening because I'm streaming Spotify in my vehicle. I am maybe 5 minutes down the road, and since I don't have the premium subscription, Spotify has commercials every now and then. So on comes this commercial, and it is a commercial inviting whoever is listening, which is apparently me at this point. It's inviting people to come partake in Lucky's magical quest for rings. This is literally legit. I'm sober. This is a commercial playing on Spotify, and it is.
Had you heard this before? Is it a kind of a regular?
I have never heard or seen a Lucky Charms commercial in my life.
So this is even better. Good.
Not on Spotify, and not so relevant to be 5 minutes after I left the ice cream shop. It's a commercial to come join Lucky on his magical quest for rings, and you can go to Lucky Charms camp or something. I almost had to pull over to the side of the road. That's the kind of synchronicity. So that's the part where a lot of people won't believe that story. A lot of people will try to dismiss it until you say, okay, well, point me in the direction of another Spotify commercial that is broadcasting a Lucky Charms camp meetup for magical rings.
But it's always kind of personal, isn't it? Most of the synchronicities.
Very, very, very personal. I can't remember if that was me and you talking, Paul, where we had that. There is this sense of humor that the universe has that is very personal and twisted, kind of in a funny way, though.
Definitely. Where was this actual location for finding the Lucky Charms kind of education center?
No, it was the 30-second blip, and I didn't bother. I was so flabbergasted that it was even on the Spotify that I was just I didn't know what to think.
Because it'd be hilarious if you were in the same location as that at the time of hearing the
Well, then I would
advert.
Really think somebody
would have
tracking me.
Popped you out your skull at that point, wouldn't it?
Well, because that's the other thing that you go through when this first starts to happen. You start to think, am I being surveilled? Is somebody I've thought people were following me, because things are hitting so close to home. Like, no one else was in my car. No one knew that I was looking at a poster of Lucky Charms ice cream. How can this commercial come? That it's just very strange.
Oh, definitely. Talking about surveillance, have you ever read the book or heard of the book Cameleo, A Strange But True Story of Invisible Spies, Heroin Addiction and Homeland Security by Robert A. Guthrie?
Sounds terrifying.
Sure does.
I'll put it in the link.
It would scare me to death.
Oh, it was about them. A guy started to see, prior to the Predator film coming out, in his house, kind of slight light distortion within his environment and room, and couldn't figure out what was going on. And it kind of boils down to that there was military testing of new invisible camouflage kit, and they were testing it on people and mucking with them in an environment. And, well, there's podcasts out there with this, and the book is just amazing. It's, it's like what you don't know is going on and what can be being developed and tried, strange stuff. So don't read it before going to bed, that's what I say.
They do brain stuff they especially clairvoyance and all that kind of stuff. And there are whole divisions of the intelligence group that do that all the time. They're looking for psychics all the time to see if they can find information remotely about.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it goes on all over the world. The Russians do it. We do it. They spent a lot of money on it. So it's one reason why, there was one great film about that was just really touching. But so it's not so far-fetched as you might think.
The one thing that I've noticed, I've been able to get, I said not duplicated, but I've been able to maybe 3 times with 3 different people have, I don't want to say manipulate reality. I've been able to point out, how do I say this? Things have happened that were pretty far-fetched, or in the odds of them happening were very slim, but I've been able to do this with 2 or 3 other people, and they've been able to see it. To the point, one guy got scared. The earliest, so my near-death experience happened after a 6-day stay in the hospital, infection in my toe. I got out of the hospital, I think I was in there from Saturday night until the next Friday afternoon. And then I had to have a follow-up appointment Tuesday. And in that room, you know how the doctor sits on his little spinny round chair and he gets right up to you, almost, in between your legs because you're looking eye to eye and he's on your eye level.
Right.
So there's a difference when you're looking directly into somebody's eyes and talking. Well, this was fresh from my experience. And I started to, because I didn't know we were going to go into this deep, but so.
You don't have to go into deep, by the way.
It's all right. I'll try to make this one quick.
Just to let you know, I've also put in the shared section that book and also included the people that I realized into the tweet. The Camellia one.
This will be I'll quicken it up, but it just comes from a doctor's perspective outside looking into this, whatever we are going through. So he was looking at me, and my body chemistry will start to change when this starts to, let's see. When my brain starts to get going, it's my body chemistry changes for some reason. The temperature, like sometimes I will sweat, like almost like right now, like the very top crown of my head will sweat, but none of the rest of my body. This started to happen as I was trying to explain to the doctor that something had happened while I was in the hospital from from last week. And he's looking at me, and the 2 words that I had used at this point, but I hadn't really told anybody, were either awakening or enlightenment. And the doctor is looking at me directly in the eyes, and he wanted me to explain something. At this point, a tear starts coming out of my eye, because this whole thing is overwhelmingly emotional, physical, mental. It's all over, so far over the top and immense that you can't put it into words. But so the doctor was looking at me, and a tear started coming out of my eye, and I said, something happened. And he looked at me, and he started to say, he goes, "Do you mean like an awake?" And he stopped dead in his tracks. And I said, "You were going to say awakening." And he looked at me with a very confused, scared look. If you've ever looked directly into somebody's eyes, you can tell fear. He got scared because he didn't finish the word, and I never said the word. So he came up with this word on his own, and he backed up. And he literally backed up with almost disbelief, because he is not supposed to, in his mind, experience this outside force that could potentially, like, somehow he was able to understand what was going on, even if it was only for a second. It backed up a doctor. So that's the kind of thing.
Can I put in here?
Yeah.
I'm the daughter of a surgeon and the sister of a surgeon.
Wow.
So this isn't synchronicity now. This is things converging, I think, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those doctors, and they encounter life-death situations all the time. My brother described a point at which he was operating, and the patient went into cardiac arrest, and he had to do CPR. So they encounter this on a frequent basis. And there are people who have your experiences, and it must affect these doctors. They have it on a regular basis. But I think they are very much in the profession taught to compartmentalize things. So just put that aside, just box that and move on and address the situation.
Yeah, you could tell he's like, no, I'm supposed to prescribe, assess, and figure, this third thing, this outside force. You could tell it affected
That's
him in a
not
way.
backed by science.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
It's the same.
No, but I'm just saying they can't cope because it's not backed by science. They have
What
to
I'm
because it goes
saying is-
against the Western side of it all.
Exactly.
Yes.
But when you see fear in someone's eyes because
Oh, yeah.
of something that is foreign to them, that's what I'm talking about. You can
And also
tell.
it's lawsuits as well. The Americans love the good lawsuit, don't they?
Yes, they do. My ex-wife is a neurologist, so she used to tell me there are things that we are not allowed to discuss from an insurance point of view, from a American Medical Association point of view, and your particular employer. Like say you work at a hospital or you work, if you're working in private practice, but they have to be very careful about what they agree to or say, because like in my case, no one has ever been able to explain what happens to me. They don't have any idea. And remember, I was on the board of the Epilepsy Foundation in the national group, and there were 44 world famous neurologists at this convention. And Hillary Clinton was the speaker. And I got to talk to some of the greatest neurologists in the world. And since I was on the board myself, and they didn't have an answer. The ones that were the most mature, the ones that were the brightest and that had the highest reputations said right off the bat, we don't know why you have what you have. We just don't know. And we're not going to know for quite a while. And just like I heard a physicist say, we're not smart enough to understand what's going on in the universe. A Nobel Prize winning physicist, he just said, we're just not smart enough. We need to go to the next level of our intelligence to get to this next level of the physical universe, because we're just not going to figure it out. We just can't figure it out. So when you get to that level of people, then you get down to the lower ones, and then they're just obeying rules. But when they're at the top of their professions and they're world famous, they don't have to worry about that. Then you get the truth, the real truth from them, and it's a shocking experience when you get the real truth. And the truth is, we don't know what it is that you have. We don't know what causes it, and we haven't got any idea, none whatsoever. So,
well, I think the first step for the world is to, start acknowledging some of these.
Gonna have to ask you to all pause while I quickly unswitch my microphone and put in the charger. Otherwise, this room will disappear entirely. So I think we're all quite happy that I keep the room going for a bit.
Yeah, it's been hours, so.
It will be shutting down in the next 20 minutes, I can tell you that, but it can shut down a lot faster if I don't change this microphone over.
What time is it there?
11:10 in the evening. Hang on a second, I'm not going to be able to hear anything in a minute. To help our research and understanding, leave Perceptions Today's podcast reviews, subscribe to the podcast, along with the other social media accounts, and share. Come and join our live events. That way we can get together and have thoughtful discussions along with advancing our understanding of concepts as we go along.